One.
Thank you very much. I declare the meeting open, and I'll ask the General Manager to read out the conditions of the meeting.
Good afternoon, everyone. This meeting is recorded and live streamed for public viewing via the internet in accordance with Council's Code of Meeting Practice, with the recording stored and made available to the public for later viewing. The recording is subject to copyright. Members of the public attending or speaking at this meeting will be recorded and publicly broadcast. By attending this meeting, you voluntarily consent to your attendance and participation being recorded. Any part of the meeting that is held in closed session will not be live streamed. Council requests that everyone present is respectful and uses appropriate language. Council does not accept liability for any defamatory, discriminatory or offensive comments that are made during the course of the meeting. Please ensure that all electronic devices, including mobile phones, are switched to silent. Under the Code of Meeting Practice, public recording of this meeting is prohibited without prior authorisation by Council. Council's live streaming of meetings via Facebook is designed to encourage constructive dialogue. We remind users to be digitally responsible and respect their fellow posters. We ask users to keep comments relevant and not to spam or post personal or commercially sensitive information. This includes content that may be defamatory, derogatory, offensive or discriminatory towards Council employees, councillors, other persons or organisations. Failure to follow Facebook house rules will result in comments being deleted, and if this behaviour persists, the user will be blocked.
Thank you. If you all be upstanding, please. I'll be doing acknowledgement of country. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners on the land we are meeting today.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry.
My respects to elders both past and present, and also pass that respect to any Torres Strait or Aboriginal people here today. I'll also read the civic prayer. Almighty God, from whom comes every good and perfect gift, we give you thanks for the blessings you bestow upon us in this Shire. Grant to those who hold office in this council the spirit of justice and truth, of wisdom and charity, that mindful of our responsibility, we may promote the welfare of your people and advance the common good. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor? Mr. Mayor, are you going to read into now the tape the conditions of this meeting in relation to the virus,
If you resume your seat, Councillor Scandrett, I will continue on with without interruption.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
There will be a change, obviously, of meeting practice, as anybody who's live streaming and watching can see. Councils have been requested, and as you might pick up, the crosses on the floor that councillors have been requested to place their chairs on to maintain the accepted supported distance by the federal government. If councillors choose not to do that, then they do that at their own volition. The meeting will run with people councillors who wish to speak to raise their hand, and so they can come forward and present themselves to their microphone that they normally sit at. Otherwise, and I'll take only hand motions, hand indications, and not anyone who is sitting at the desk to give unfair advantage to themselves in relation to being able to monitor the lights. So that's how the meeting will run. Hopefully it will run very quickly, and because of the situation, it is unlikely we'll be meeting again for a month, and if we don't do that, it will probably be told to us anyway. In that meantime, the staff will be working with suppliers and whatever to wait until the OLG has worked with the state government to allow live streaming in remote locations, meaning your own homes, and as such council meetings will resume with live streaming taking place. That is going to take time. It will probably take longer than a few weeks. Hopefully it can be done by the end of April, so we can resume council meetings as per the altered legislation, which will take away the need for councillors to be present in the chamber to vote. Hopefully, again, that will be only for a very short time. The other indication that I'd like to raise is that listening to the Minister for Local Government this morning, Shelley Hancock, it appears more than certain that the council term will be extended for a further 12 months, and then perhaps from September 21st, 21 through until December 21. All of these have to be confirmed, but that is my feeling as what will happen. As for the coronavirus, the staff are working extremely hard at, and in conjunction with all the other councils within the JO area, and the GM has been working with those councils to try and make sure that what we put in place is similar to what they're doing, so as everybody is on the same footing and understanding. Is there anything else you'd like to say at this stage, Madam General Manager? I will take a question in relation to... Yes, we'll get to that. This is the biggest health crisis this country may see in its history. We all know the Spanish flu epidemic back in 2017-18 took a huge amount of lives, and we cannot take this lightly. We have to work together for the common betterment of the community, and what we make today is, as has been said, appears to be the decisions in relation to the mayoral minute may seem to be draconian, but it is what we are dealing with at the moment. And as such, I'm just looking for a spirit of cooperation so we can get this meeting done, finished, out of here, and reduce the risk for everyone. Councillor Scandrett, you had your hand up for a question.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The code meeting practice...
No, please, we're doing the coronavirus.
You talk over me all the time. I am talking about the coronavirus. I'm going to refer to the code of meeting practice. 6.15, entitlement of the public to attend council meetings. Everyone is entitled there, and we're required to do that. How are you going with ensuring that the public can participate in any ordinary meetings? Now,
no, okay, you've asked the question.
And my second point is, are you intending to have ordinary meetings or only urgent meetings?
The meetings will be as per the guidelines that we are still waiting on from the Minister. She will be telling us how we will be running our meetings and how the public can participate, and they will probably be live streamed as much as this is. So there is a common central location that it is broadcast to the general public. That's how they, I believe, will participate as the same as us. Councillor Markwart.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to ask a simple question. Has public access been restricted to this meeting today, and is it seen as a problem today? Thank you.
No, it hasn't been restricted. I was on the radio this morning and suggested that it would be best if the public did not attend. It would be up to them. The public are permitted, and as such can stay for the duration of the meeting.
Thank you.
Councillor Turland.
So, what policy do you have in place which relate to what's happening tonight?
Could you just speak up, because I can't hear you.
What policy do you have in place that relates to what's happening tonight?
In relation
To
to
what's
the
happening tonight? The
the
virus?
cancellation of the meetings?
No, the whole lot. What policy do you have in place and procedures, which I've been asking for a copy of now for nearly 2 weeks? What policies do you have in place already to date to handle what we're doing tonight and the coronavirus? What policies do you have?
I think I'll defer that to the
thank
General
you.
Manager.
All the policies, council does not have to make a policy for council meetings under coronavirus circumstances. Council has to do that for its staff, and it certainly has done that for its staff. The government determines what happens in places like this, and the Minister for Local Government has made certain arrangements that I've just seen something come through, but I haven't had an opportunity to read it. And it is about meetings. It is about the process of meetings. It will be about how meetings are conducted. And that is what will determine how meetings are going to be run in the future.
But we don't have a policy today which relates to the staff protection, the community protection, of which I've been asking for. I have been
Councillor,
asking for.
I do have a staff policy, but it is a staff policy and councillors are not entitled to it.
Yes, we are.
No, you're not.
We endorse the policy, do we not?
Councillor Turland, the answer has been given.
I don't accept the answer. We
Okay.
are councillors, we should endorse the policy. We
No,
have
it's
done
not
the
a
policy.
council
No,
policy.
sorry,
It is a
not.
management policy for
It's
the
a
management
so
of
it's
staff.
operational again. Here we go into
It is
we can do
operational,
whatever
councillor.
we want.
Perhaps you should read the Local Government Act and my role in this council. Yes, councillor, please.
Excuse me, Councillor Turland. Please,
I have. Have you done anything?
please. Good grief, I just cannot believe that we are behaving like this at the moment. Apologies, Councillor Peter Nelson. Move Councillor McLaughlin, seconded Councillor Markwart. Any discussion?
Yes.
Put it.
Yes, please. Oh,
Yes.
thank
First question is, why is Mr Nelson not here? You've sent an email out saying Councillor Peter
Yes,
has
I
done the right
apologise
thing.
for that. I
Is that
didn't put
because he
Nelson
now
in it.
is infected, or is he has to be self-isolated at home?
He has a. He felt that he had a cough this morning, and he wanted to self-isolate so as to be responsible.
So he has been tested, or is it just hearsay from you?
No, he has been tested.
Okay, just to confirm, everybody, I have been tested, and I'm negative.
That is terrific
That's
news,
very
Councillor.
good news after being accused of the carrier for everybody else, Councillor Mayor.
I
Yeah.
don't know who
Oh,
did.
would you want me to read it to you?
Oh, Councillor
No, I haven't
Turland,
finished yet.
thank you
I haven't
very
finished
much.
yet.
No,
I want to apologise for the clothing I'm wearing because my son is isolating and has done now for 14 days, and he is clear of the virus today. I have not been able to go in and change my
yeah,
clothes
Councillor Turland.
because I have done the
Yeah,
right thing. You
Councillor
indicated I might not have done the
Oh,
right thing in an email.
Councillor Turland,
You brought it upon yourself.
I am discussing apologies.
No, well, I'm apologising because I haven't been able to go home and get dressed because my son's done the right thing. Have you done the right thing?
No, I have not been
I can
tested.
see a cough medicine
Excuse
sitting here on
me,
the table now,
Councillor.
a cough medicine. You think that he might not have the virus?
Oh, Councillor Turland, resume
You
your
have not
seat.
been tested yourself. You accuse others.
Councillor Turland,
Read what's in the
Councillor
toilet. Have you been
Turland,
around
resume
animals?
your seat.
Have you been around animals?
Councillor Turland, no, I haven't. Will you resume
There it
your
is
seat?
there.
If you do not resume
Coronavirus.
your seat, I will
do
ask
what?
you to. I'll ask you to leave the chamber.
Buckley's in that.
I beg your pardon.
You go. Read what
Yeah,
you've
yeah,
got in
Thank
the
you,
toilet about
Councillor
coronavirus.
Turland.
I'm going to. Mr Mayor,
No,
Coronavirus.
Councillor,
It's in your toilet.
Councillor,
Have you been around animals?
Councillor,
Accuse me. It's in your own toilet.
we move now as a suspect. Councillor Turland, any more and I will ask you to leave. That's it. Thank you. We are moving on to the suspension of standing orders.
I've had my hand up. You asked for hands up.
Councillor Scandrett, is it to do with apologies?
Yes, Mr Mayor, because Councillor Turner has just... I'll hand this up. So
I don't want to touch it, thank you.
Well, I'll put it there. There it is.
There you
I will
go.
refer to it now. This is a photograph of something that was drawn to council's...
What is the... It's about an apology.
It's about a health issue.
Councillor...
Council has...
Councillor... Resume
You're
yourself.
not interested in a health issue to do
No,
with the
I am
virus.
interested in getting on with this meeting.
You're not interested in a health issue.
Councillor...
All right.
Councillor Markwell.
Stand up that time.
I'd just like to bring to want everyone's attention that when the council makes an apology, you're all right. Excuse me.
I'm sorry.
When a council makes an apology, they are not required under any code of meeting practice to specify why they are taking that leave. So I find it rather offensive that other councils are seeking information to do with that. I think that's totally irrelevant and totally inappropriate. I'd just like to make that point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Markwell. Now, we've put the motion of apology, so that's been done. That was moved by Councillor McLaughlin and seconded by Councillor Markwell. Any discussion? Put it. All in favour? Against? Carried. I'd like somebody to move suspension of standing orders to deal with all items on the business paper with the exceptions of 7.1, 7.2, 7.3 and 1.1.
Point of order, Mr Mayor.
Pardon? I will... Sorry, we'll do it's on the run sheet as the suspension of standing orders. Somebody move that way. Councillor Whipper.
Point of order.
Seconded Councillor Markwell. Your point of order.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm trying to get a grip as to 6.13 in the Code of Meeting Practice, where it says that the health and safety of councillors, council staff and other members of the public may be put at risk by attending a meeting, etc. And I want to know, Mr Mayor, what is it that is urgent or is an emergency that has led to us having this meeting today?
Thank you.
You've had correspondence.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Scandrett. Would you resume your seat,
You just
please?
talk over me all the time.
It is no.
Yes,
there
you
is no comment to be made
No
in
emergency?
relation to that.
No emergency? No urgency?
The urgency is in the business. So would you resume your seat?
I'm at loss to see that, Mr Mayor.
You might learn something, Councillor Scandrett. I put the recommendation. All in favour? Against? Carried.
Councillor Scandrett, please turn the light off. Share the microphone. Thank you.
Now, thank you. I apologise unreservedly, Councillor Scandrett, if I've made in any way inference or embarrassed you or made any other comment that may have hurt your feelings. Let us move to the adoption of the previous minutes. Now we have the adoption of the extraordinary meeting held on the Theodorette commencing 11th of March on the 11th of March. Move Councillor Scandrett, seconded Councillor...
No.
Mover and
There's
the
a correction.
seconder. Move Councillor Whipper, seconded Councillor Andrews. Question to the correctness of the minutes.
Mr Mayor, the minutes of the extraordinary general meeting, if you go to page 5, down the bottom, it says amendment moved by Turland and Halstead that council terminate the contract with the general manager. That is not correctly reported. It says it's lost. And in fact, there were 3 dissenting votes there that were asked to be recorded, as with the previous...
Would you like the minutes to be amended to
yes,
show
it
your...
should say Councillor Scandrett, Turland and Halstead
Then that
requested
will-
that their dissenting vote be recorded on that amendment.
Mr Mayor, it's there.
It's there if
In
you...
the minutes.
It's...
Your dissenting vote was recorded.
On the matter above.
You didn't dissent against it.
then it will be amended
Thank
and
you.
your names will be put in to reflect that. Okay? Thank you, minute taker. Put the motion. All in favour? Those against? Carried. Now we move to the minutes of the same day, Wednesday the 11th of March, commencing at 3:30. The correctness of the minutes, moved by Councillor Andrews, seconded Councillor Markwart. Any discussion on the correctness? Put it. All in favour?
Yes.
Against? Carried. Well, if you don't want to support the correctness of the minutes, that's fine.
Discussion on the correctness, yes.
Well, Councillor Scandrett, I am not taking, if you lean over and put your light on, I am not going to take your question.
Thank you. Mr Mayor, in the minutes of the ordinary meeting on page 290, 18.3, notice of motion, poll for 2024 Mayor.
On what page of the minutes?
Oh, I'm sorry, of the minutes, it's item 18.3, Mr Mayor.
It's page 50.
Yeah. And I want to just point out that I never moved a motion saying that a constitutional referendum, etc., be financed. It was always a poll, and it should be corrected, as the motion says.
No, sorry, my recollection of that was the Councillor Nelson did that. He put it in that it be a constitutional referendum, and that got passed.
Well,
That is my recollection. We will listen to the tape for confirmation, and if that is incorrect, it will come back. So it will be subject to the tape being listened to on 18.3. And yes, there is a clear difference, Councillor Scandrett.
that's why I said a poll.
And, well, you were outsmarted. So I put that. All in favour, please say aye. So that will be with the exception of 18.3, that will be confirmed. So we move to declarations of interest. Does anybody have declarations of interest? Councillor Turlin, you declared okay, no declarations of interest. Then we move on to mayoral minute, and if we move to...
Before we start the mayoral minute, can you explain the mayoral minute to everybody under the Code of Meeting Practice, in the sense that, are we allowed to do amendments to the mayoral minute, or is it just a slam dunk?
No, the mayoral minute can be altered right up until it's presented to council, as can notices of motion, or motions moved from the
So
floor.
we can do an amendment in relation to the mayoral minute?
Yes, you can, if you want.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to ask the question, you've commented, and I'll move an amendment.
We have done that. What have we done? Well, yes, it was. The items were all deferred, subject to, other than, and I read them out. 7.1, 7.2, 7.3 and 1.1. So everything else is deferred.
We haven't got a mover and it hasn't been...
I'll move that one then, Mr Mayor.
And you can't go back.
That has been moved.
Yeah.
It hasn't. Okay, with suspension of standing orders to deal with...
That wasn't clear. In fact, what you said wasn't that, but it should have been that, and I took it as that. But I think you need to...
Okay, for clarification, I don't know where I supposedly went wrong, that we have to suspend standing orders and we are moving en bloc all the items with the exception of 7.1, 7.2, 7.3 and 1.1. I thought that was done before.
I move an amendment.
That was moved and seconded by Councillor Markwart. And 9.1 and 11.1. Well, it's not on here.
It's not 1-1, it should be 9.
Oh, 9.1. Okay, Station Street upgrade.
I think you better see that on the screen before we vote on it.
right? So everything on the screen
Is to be...
is to be deferred,
And the rest is done.
and the rest is dealt with.
That's the point, Mr. Mayor. If I wasn't mentioned, you've now said it, so everyone understands it.
Yeah. Well, I thought I'd made that very clear before, but obviously I didn't, so I
It's not even written
apologise.
on your run sheet.
So I put that, Councillor Turland.
Procedural, could we just scroll down to the bottom of this, with the exception of, could those 5 items be put there, please?
No.
You don't need it.
We don't need it. They're the ones that we are we are deferring. So they're the ones on there. I put the recommendation. All in favour. Those against. Carried. So everything is to be deferred, subject other than that is on the run sheet. When we move to the first one, permission for backyard burning in bushfire affected villages. There is an addition. Before you say the amendment, the inclusion is Bundanoon. Okay, so there has been a suggestion from staff that there are areas of Bundanoon that will require backyard burning, and as such, and parts of Bundanoon Township impacted by the 2019-20 bushfires. So that will be included in point 1. Right? Councillor Turland, do you have a amendment?
The amendment is at 7.1, this is the mayoral minute. Backyard burning in bushfire affected areas, as you said, Bundanoon, to be allowed and approved by the RSF to control any approval process. Number 2, that this meeting should not have been conducted as it is endangering council and staff.
No. No. Nothing to do with backyard burning.
But everything to do with this meeting.
Thank you.
It's a valid motion.
Okay, it's a valid motion. You're speaking to the amendment, but I won't permit COVID-19 to be brought into backyard burning. Well, that's got nothing to do with the motion, Councillor Turland.
Point of order, I think Councillor Turland can speak to his amendment.
Yeah, you can speak to the amendment, but it's...
To the chamber, not have a discussion on
Councillor Turland.
If I have a seconder to it.
I've already seconded it.
Second to
Would you
Councillor
want to
Scanlon.
wait till you type that up, please?
It's the
Well, I'll ask you
backyard.
to
The
intervene,
backyard.
Mr. Paul.
The backyard part I will take the burning, but I will not allow the second part.
Why?
It is not part of the agenda, Councillor Turland. I've tried to explain
That's
that.
exactly what the whole agenda's about.
No, it's not, Councillor
We
Turland.
should not, why are we sitting in squares way over the bugger?
It's got nothing to do. Your amendment has nothing to do with the mayoral minute that has been presented. Your amendment does not do anything, Councillor Turland.
Well, I
It's a
think it
separate issue. That you can speak to the first part, but the second part is not permitted.
Well, okay, I'll speak to the first part. I don't even know why this mayoral minute is here. It's a total waste of time. The RSF should be the one that approves the burning on less than 4,000 square metres. That's our policy. What we've done is you've brought 3 motions, mayoral minutes into this chamber to fatten up what you wanted this meeting for, which is basically Station Street. Unbelievable. No. You can have your time in a minute. This is totally not needed. The RSF takes control of what we do and where we burn. I know that because we've applied to burn on our land. And we, not council, you had to go to the RSF for approval. Anybody can go through the process and burn if the RSF approves it, not council. But we have a policy on backyard burning to save smoke. Whoopee. Doesn't make a lot of sense. So this whole exercise on the next 3 mayoral minutes have been a total fattening up of a meeting we shouldn't be at, as I've said in my second part, of which you will not allow, if you're putting all of us at risk. I'll leave it at that. and have a right to reply in a minute.
Councillor Whipper, and then Councillor McLaughlin. Councillor Scandrett, I will ask you to turn your light off. Councillor McLaughlin is the next speaker, and I will not allow you to turn your lights on until you've been recognised. Councillor
Mr. Mayor, we do.
Whipper.
Mr. Mayor, we do have a backyard burning policy, so I think this is quite in order. And if we're in sync with the RFS, then it creates no confusion. So I don't see any problem with bringing this forward, just for a point of clarification. What I am having issues with is the fact that councillors are not keeping to agenda. We're all here. We know these are not normal times, so codes of conduct, codes of meeting practice, this is not business as usual. We're here to deal with some urgent matters and hopefully get home out of this environment. We've got councillors saying we shouldn't be here. Well, let's get out of here. Let's deal with the business. Let's get out of here. And those councillors that said we shouldn't be here, they were given the opportunity, as we all were, not to be here tonight. We were given the invitation to come or not to come. So I think it's just a wasting of time. Let's get on with this so we can get out of this chamber and deal with what we have to. I think this is a good motion and it's consistent, takes away any confusion.
Thank you very much, Councillor Whipper. Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My understanding is burning is only allowed on larger blocks over 4,000 square metres. That's my understanding. So my understanding is that this that you've put in place allows burning in villages and those parts of Bundanoon that are probably under 4,000. So now they will comply.
That's
so
right.
They will go through the normal process, I understand, of getting a fire permit. In other words, they come out and have a look, make sure your pile isn't more than 2 metres high, all those types of things, that you notify your neighbours, all the things that you're meant to do. And I think this is a good motion.
Thank you. And that you've understood the motion, Councillor McLaughlin. It is to make sure that the people of the villages that have material that needs to be burnt can burn it without breaking our policy of not even being allowed to approach the RFS for a permit. Anyway, I put the recommendation. All in favour, please raise your hand.
You said I could speak.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Councillor Scandrett.
We can't do the recommendation before the amendment has been put and passed or lost.
It's just crazy how this meeting's
You
going.
don't understand the code of meeting practice.
Anyway, I'm following your rules, but you're not following yours, Mr. Mayor. The RFS can issue permits in these situations, as we know. There's no particular urgency for this because the fire season is still in place and the RFS can do this. I agree with Councillor Turl, and this has been brought forward, however well-meaning it is, to pad out a meeting. We shouldn't be meeting today. We shouldn't.
Okay. Councillor Turland is right. I'll put the amendment. All in favour of the amendment, please raise your hand. No, you don't. You moved an amendment. Okay, so you've got to know your meeting practice. I put the amendment. All in favour of the amendment, please raise your hand. Those against, the amendment is lost. I now put the motion. Councillor Scandrett. I put the motion. All in favour of the motion, please raise your hand. Carried. Noble, now if we move to the second notice of motion, which is just to be noted, I'd done this to come up last week. There was comment that the supermarkets needed help. So can somebody just move it be noted, please? Yes, you have a question?
Mr Mayor, is it not true that the Premier gazetted on Monday afternoon a statewide exemption for supermarkets?
That's correct.
Well, why are we doing this?
Because this was already,
You could have just taken it out when you took out the other items.
No,
I move this one be not
Be
proceeded
noted.
with.
well, move that it be noted.
No, it doesn't need to be noted. It's just not relevant. It's already been overridden by the Premier.
Well, I can't help that, Councillor.
I'm moving it. I believe I have a
Councillor
seconder.
Scandrett, stop being disruptive.
Please, may I make a point? Once the agenda is issued and out, you can't take it off the agenda.
Okay, I'm asking for somebody to move that it be noted. Move Councillor Whipper, secondly Councillor Markwart that it be noted. Councillor Turland.
The state government has already taken control of this process and action. This motion, that's why I did it, therefore it needed not to be here. I understand what you've just said because you put the business paper out. But you brought changes to the chamber here today in relation to it. Why didn't you just say noted in the changes you just put in front of us?
Councillor Turland, I'm not sure what, it's being moved that it be noted because, as has been pointed out by both of you, it has been usurped by the Premier. So it's a non-issue. Just put the motion. All in favour that it be noted. Against? Carried. Okay. Now we move to 7.3. And if you note, I have passed around a variation to the mayoral minute. And that is that the delegations in relation to tenders that be authorised to the General Manager be until the 30th of June 2020 or otherwise amended, or until council meetings recommence by way of video conferencing or other means. The whole aim of that is to allow, yes, Councillor Turland, I'm speaking to my mayoral minute. And there appears to be, as we say, confusion on how long there will be before council meetings, and as such, we've got to get council meetings back on track as soon as possible, and the council also has to function in a normal manner. Now, the GM has through council resolution brought tenders to council meetings. If we are not going to meet and a tender has been placed into out there for somebody to tender for, then until we resume normal practice, then the GM be given the delegation to authorise the acceptance. I see no problem with it. So that is the only others part that needs, that's the only other part that I can see that may be of a bit controversial, which is through a council resolution that the council determines tenders. But this is not normal times. Councillor, yes, Councillor Markwart, Councillor Turland, and then Councillor Halstead.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. All I wish to say is I put the
you
motion.
seconded that, didn't you, Councillor Markwart?
Oh, sorry, you've put the motion, have you?
Yeah, I've put...
Oh, I'm sorry. I will second it.
No, you're seconding the mayoral minute.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you.
It's correct.
Thank you, Councillor Turland. Yes, Councillor Turland.
No, I'm not taking it off. Not with somebody over here coughing who's never been tested.
Thank you, councillor Turley.
Sorry, point of order.
Point of order.
I think I should have an opportunity to say that I went to the doctor
Councillor
yesterday.
Turley, will you resume your seat, please?
Just seeing that he's made reference to my cough medicine. 2 weeks ago I was in this chamber and I coughed. I've had a cough for a long time. I went to the doctor yesterday afternoon. I got some antibiotics for a chest infection and I'm taking, I had a full check, I haven't got a temperature and I'm taking some cough medicine. Just so councillors can be assured that I feel well, I've just got a slight cough. So that no more aspersions from Councillor Turley can be thrown at me that I'm a carrier. I've been to the doctor yesterday. I do not have a temperature, I have a slight cough.
Thank you, councillor.
On that
Councillor
point of
Turley.
order, is it not the practice from the Chief Medical Officer, anybody who has coughs has to wear a nose mask? Is that
Councillor-
not the case?
Councillor Turland, we are not here as a medical practitioner. Will you please refer to the amendment?
A nose mask would be very handy to ones who are coughing all the time, or at least into their elbow as the standard is supposed to be put by the medical and the government of New South Wales and Australia.
Thank you, Councillor, I'll do.
Good on you. The business of council be conducted by the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor as representatives of the whole 9 councillors from the 26th of March, which is tomorrow, and onwards. That all tenders be submitted to council be determined by the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor and a representative of the community representing the 9 councillors from the 26th of March 2020 onwards.
Thank you, councillor Turland. Is there any further discussion? Go, councillor Halstead, and then councillor McLaughlin.
Yes, I was coming from the same perspective as Councillor Hill.
You might need to go to the microphone, councillor.
Probably pressing the wrong button. But I felt that item 3 on the agenda should be added to what Councillor Turland said, so I'll be foreshadowing a further amendment unless Councillor Turland agrees to what is there as number 3. In other words, 1 and 2 as per Councillor Turland. And number 3, what's written there for obvious reasons, it deals with the coronavirus.
Okay, so what I'll suggest is that we vote, well, is anybody else wishing to speak? Councillor McLaughlin.
We need to read it.
As a,
Can we just read it out slowly?
Given Mr Mayor...
no, wait until we get the amendment up. Councillors, if you're going to move big amendments, can I ask that you write them out prior to the meeting and give them to the minute taker so they can be put up on the screen? So can you read it out? Councillor McLaughlin, will you sit down, please? Councillor Turland.
That the business of council be conducted by the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor as representing of the whole 9 councillors from the 26th of March 2020 onwards. Number 1.
Yeah, that's number 1.
You got it?
Two.
Number 2, that the tenders submitted to council be determined by the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor and a representative from the community.
I can't hear you. Sorry.
Well,
Will you lower your microphone to your mouth, please?
that all tenders submitted to council be determined by the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor and... Okay.
Two councils be submitted. Yep.
To the mayor and deputy.
Be submitted to council.
Carry on.
They do, yeah. And a community representative
Yep.
representing the whole 9 councillors from the 26th. So tenders submitted?
Sorry.
Okay.
Representing the whole 9 councillors. Yep.
From the 26th.
Sorry.
From the 26th of March.
From.
from, on, whatever you wish. That all tenders submitted to council be, so there's double up there. Double up there.
Can you just give it to me?
What?
Be determined. Be determined.
Be determined, full
Be
stop.
determined, yep. The submitting, you've got too many submitting in there. Be determined where it's submitted.
Be determined.
Well, no, where you've got B by
When-
itself, it's BE and then determined, not submitted twice. You've got submitted in twice.
Right, number 3.
Mr. Councillor Halstead, what's your number 3 again? Okay, so we drop down number 3 and drop it into that section. I know, it's still...
Okay, so there, that's it. And then the number 3 as printed.
That's still not right. You've got 2 submitted. All tenders submitted to council be determined, the word, determined there. By. And then word for word is your number 3 in your mayoral minute.
All right, you wish to speak to it, Councillor Turley?
Yes, we went through this process a year ago where we refused to allow that process to go forward, pushed by council staff to allow the general manager to take it out of our control. I'm up or down, what do you want?
I'm sorry, I couldn't see it was on. I just thought that.
And so what we've
Excuse me, Councillor Scandrett. Councillor Turland.
So we have a policy in place already, which allows only the councillors to make the decision on tenders, which should be the process. Mr. Paul, have you got a problem? Shaking your head on the way out?
Councillor Turland.
I've been
Will
abused
you-
last week, you know I've been abused.
Excuse me, I don't know anything.
Yes,
Will
you
you
do.
please
So
debate
does
the
the general
point?
manager.
Will you
That I've
please
been-
debate the
I have
point?
been absolutely denigrated by the Deputy General Manager.
Councillor Turland, will you please, you are making statements that can be used at another time
Can be-
in another forum, so I suggest you just stick to the agenda.
Well, as I've said, the tenders should go through full council, and it can't at the moment. And therefore, the way it should be done is at least with 2 councillors and somebody from the community, somebody like a lawyer who understands the rules and also understands the Local Government Act, would be very advisable to have that 3rd person to give the degree of comfort to the community that we are spending their money wisely and not at the whim of only one person and the staff. It should be, and it would have been better to have all councillors make the decision. I don't understand why we can't make the decision through all around email that we all can say yes or no. That happens in the corporate world. The corporate world has board of directors meetings, not face to face, all around the world. But we are going to delegate one person.
Councillor Turland?
I'm just waiting for...
Sorry,
Well-
I feel ill.
Sorry?
I feel ill.
Sorry?
I feel ill. I was speaking to Daniel about getting...
Sorry,
Look-
sorry. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, well, look, can we get on with it, please? The staff are getting very stressed, and I mean very stressed, the way we are conducting our business at these council meetings. Can you please complete
Are you thinking
your
we're not
amendment.
stressed? Do you think we're not stressed?
Sorry, point of order, can we please speak to the issue on the agenda?
Well, if the mayor stops interrupting me, I might be fine. And you're interrupting as well.
I'm raising a point of order.
Councillor, please.
Are we allowed to sit down?
Pardon? Will you... Councillor Turland, you are going to run out of time.
We'll stop intervening. That's as simple as a fact. As I said, we should be not delegating one member and staff members of public money. We have not had a great success to date on projects that we started, so I think it needs to be put through yourself, myself, and a third member of the public to represent how we spend their money in tenders. It would be unfortunate to think, and against in good business practice, to allow one person to have the ability to spend millions of ratepayers' money. It would be unlogical. We can't allow it. I'll wait for...
Thank you,
It can't be a right
Councillor
of reply,
McLaughlin.
can it? No. It's a minute. Bullshit.
Then Councillor Whipper, then Councillor Houston.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I will probably speak against this amendment. I've got no real problem with council making a decision for tenders going forward. I think it's the way we've all done it. But until the legislation has changed, that we don't have to physically meet, because surely I think we'll all be in lockdown. That's a possibility. So I think the situation will probably be resolved quite quickly when the Parliament allows us to be able to deal with these things and not have to meet face to face, so that when we're, we can get these tenders and we can look at them and we can talk to them via Skype or our electronic media, so we can do it. So I think in the short term, we don't really want to have face-to-face meetings. So I understand the suggestion by Councillor Turland that the Deputy Mayor and you do that, but I think in the short term, it's going to be overcome very shortly with what the state government will do, and we will be in the same situation where we are now, where we can actually, all of us. I have a problem having someone, an independent person from the, to sit on this as well, someone from the community. That might sound fine, but we're the one, the buck stops with us. We get elected, we face the people. If we stuff up, we're the ones that cop it. I don't think we should throw this out to someone else to sit there and look at tenders, someone from the community. We represent the community.
Councillor Turland.
I'm just thinking in the short term that even though the thrust of what Councillor Turland says sounds fine, I think in the short term it'll all be circumvented by a change in the state parliament that allows councillors to operate without face-to-face when we're in lockdown. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Whipper.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I support the recommendation. I've got an enormous problem with a member of the public, unelected, doing anything in terms of tenders. I don't think that's written into the Local Government Act at all. Under the Local Government Act, it's not untoward to think that the General Manager has the power to address those tenders. A lot of other councils do it. What we're talking about here is this period of crisis that we're facing, and I think it's all very, very appropriate that we do that. Should the government allow us the opportunity to teleconference or whatever, I'm hoping it's only for the period of the crisis as well, because I would feel very, very uncomfortable if these confidential papers were given and discussed via teleconference. I mean, you just think about the ramifications of that. I mean, that is dangerous stuff. So I think we just need to get on. I'm just sitting here observing. Our staff, our community are going through enough stress. We've had bushfires, we've had floods, now this damn pandemic, and this stress that we're perpetrating through these meetings is, I think, abysmal. I think we need to all calm down, stop putting stress on everybody, get through the business paper tonight and get on with it. So let's just give that power of delegation to the General Manager for what, a month, 6 weeks, 2 months? Let's do it and just get on with the meeting tonight and stop stressing everybody out.
Thank you, Councillor Whipper. Councillor Halstead, then Councillor Scandrett.
I'm speaking on behalf of the amendment. And you would recall, Mr Mayor, as would the GM, that this was the, if you like, what was in my notice of motion. I'm not going to discuss that, so don't panic, so that others interfere with the process. What's been proposed here by Councillor Turner, I think, is totally irrelevant. The fact that things might change is one thing, and they may. On the other hand, we hear Councillor Whipper saying he's worried about things being discussed by teleconferencing. Well, that's exactly what's going to happen, teleconferencing in the future, and you will be discussing the pink pages, so what he said was totally irrelevant in my view. The issue here is the thin edge...
Order, Mr Mayor. What I said was I was concerned about confidentiality through a
Correct.
process of teleconference.
Point
Not
taken.
what won't happen.
Point taken.
Well, you still referred to what would be tenders. What else could you conclude? That's what we're talking about here, is the adoption of tenders, acceptance of tenders. We need to be very careful with this, because what I'm concerned about is the thin edge of the wedge. I know we have people such as Councillor McLaughlin here, so that won't happen, and it should come back to where it was, and obviously what's in the motion suggests that. But it's very clear to me, and I haven't changed my stance on this, that the adoption of tenders by a council is certainly paramount, and that is that it's dealing with millions, multi-millions, and this is no reflection on the current GM at all, but I've preached elsewhere many times that I would not support, don't support, and recommend councils don't adopt, that the acceptance of tenders under any circumstances be given to the GM under what was a circular that came from the Department of the Office of Local Government, not a directive, and no change in legislation. It was the council may, if it wants to, allow these extensions. So I'm very comfortable with the amendment, to be quite frank, and having someone that might be independent, the legal profession, I think Councillor Turner talked about, I'd have no problem with, because they'd be sworn to secrecy anyway, and it'd be far more secret than some of the things that transpire around here. Very clearly, this is what I was trying to get across before, and I made the error in my notice of motion, in someone's opinion anyway, by referring to the GM. It's very clear that these things are a matter of very importance, great importance, and the public, I'm quite sure, would think they'd be uncomfortable at any time with a general manager of this council or people in other councils. I'm concerned about this one, handling tenders which could be multi-millions. It's just totally unacceptable in my mind, in my opinion anyway, and so I oppose it.
Thank you,
I oppose the proposition, which is therefore...
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Mark Ward, then... I thought, no, I called you, then Councillor Scandrett, and then it'll be... Haven't you spoken?
I spoke against the amendment. I'm speaking for the motion.
Okay. Councillor Mark Ward, Councillor Scandrett, Councillor McLaughlin.
I put my hand up in response after. Oh, sorry.
Okay, I think the motion as put makes perfect sense. These are unusual times. We need to make decisions, and the more people that are involved in those decisions, the longer they will take to be executed. We have a real issue and a real thing we need to address here. We don't need, certainly not a member of the public involved in this. They don't have the background, they don't have the experience.
It's 4:30.
Thank you, Councillor Scandra. I just needed to know the time. That's very, very helpful.
Thank you, Councillor Scandrett.
Point of order.
No.
Mr. Mayor.
Please.
No, point of order on Councillor
Yep.
Mark Ward.
Procedural point of order.
What's the procedural point of
So
order?
I've got a memo here from the GM that says that the building will be closed to the general public from 4:30. So I set my alarm.
Okay, well, thank you. Then if you wish to exit, you can do with the staff. We are not the general public. We happen to be the council. Thank you, council. No point of order. Councillor Turland.
In this particular sheet here, this run sheet, there's no time. In the one that you provided to us on Friday afternoon, it closes at 8 p.m. There is no time on the one you put in front of us.
No, we don't know what time it's going to close. It could can't close. Councillor Turland, there's no point of order. Council meetings cannot go past 8 o'clock, and at 7:30 we need an extension of order, then extension of time. Councillor Markwart. I don't know. Would you resume your seat, please? Do councillors know what you are doing to the staff at the moment? You have had one staff member who has left under stress. We say we are concerned with staff. We have people making public comment about being concerned with staff. Show that you are concerned and show the respect that everybody in this room deserves, from members of the public to the security officer to members of staff. Do not denigrate the position of council. Councillor Markwart.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I don't really have much to add except this makes perfect common sense. We need to act and we need to make decisions quickly. The more people that are involved, the slower those decisions are, and by looking at this meeting, I have to say I have a big problem with the amendment. I think that would not work very well at all. So I support this very strongly. I also would like to say I support the staff wholeheartedly, and I'm very sorry they're in this situation. I wish none of us were. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Markwart. Councillor McLaughlin.
I think it's...
Oh no, it was Councillor Scandrett, then Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm supporting the amendment. The reason I'm supporting it is that this council made a very clear decision in the past to make sure we kept control of tenders. There's obvious reasons for that, and it's why we're elected here as community representatives, to make sure there's an extra line of examination in all of those. I'm not suggesting there's any particular reason for that other than the probity of managing, in this case, over $180 million worth of funds, which are at times spent on large projects. And that's why this delegation exists to a limit, and we get involved after that limit. In this case, I don't want to see any change in that. I want to see control of the council funds left with us, the elected representatives, and I'm quite happy with the fact that Councillor Turnbull has suggested a community representative to oversee that, to make sure that there's governance there. So, an experienced person in that space. It's absolutely essential to do that. Now, I can't see why we need to change this unless there's something coming that I don't know about. But, no, in all seriousness, I mean, there's no major projects other than one that's been talked about today, but there's no mention of tenders in that. There's no urgency in anything, and if there was something urgent, that's what this is about. There's no emergency that I'm aware of. So why are we seeking to change these rules? It's all about emergencies, and I don't see any tenders that are urgent or an emergency.
You may not, Councillor Scandrett, but by heck, this country's going through one. Councillor McLaughlin.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, look, I've been here for 3 terms now, and on these pick pages and on the recommendations of tenders by staff, I haven't seen one that's been changed or refused by this council. They all go through. They all get accepted. They all get accepted. The recommendation put forward by the panel of staff that oversee these go through. Okay, we look at them, we look at them and we see how many tenders there were, this, that and the other. Sometimes the recommendation is not to accept any of the tenders, and we do that. But I haven't seen us ever vote against what is recommended by staff. Never. So that's what nearly 12 years. I rest my case.
No, councillor Turland, excuse me, he's spoken for and against. Thank you, councillor Turland. You're speaking for the recommendation or against it? And for the amendment, and you've spoken for the amendment, now you're speaking against the recommendation.
Mossvale Aquatics here, $1 million out of budget. Nobody could tell us where $1 million was. They asked questions again and again and again. Station Street upgrade has been moved again and again and again, and we know it's a moving target. We're now up to $15 million. Before this meeting gets to start, it will be $17 or $18 million. There's a 17.5% increase per year, we're told by the Deputy General Manager, as a standard rule, an engineering standard in estimate. The Burma overpass, well, it wasn't ever debacle. Wasn't ever debacle. We had to find out.
Councillor Turland, what's this got to do with the tenders? What has it got to do with the tenders? There's no tender for the Bowral bypass distributor road as yet.
There could be, couldn't there?
There could be.
We won't know.
Yes, you will. Councillor Turland, address the issue and address the issue.
Wingecarribee Playhouse has been known for a long time that the roof is failing, and look at the tender that went through that process. Enormous amount of money put on a structure that could hold up the harbour bridge with no input from anybody else. Just gone through the system. Public money. The animal shelter is still going around in circles. What, for 15 years now? It could be attended. Remember our motion in front of council by April?
Councillor
By
Turland,
April,
excuse me, councillor. Don't you point your finger at me.
I pointed in the air as
am discussing. Will you please debate the tender? None of those have been tendered.
Yeah, but they could be.
But that's Councillor Turland.
The animal shelter has a motion for the end of April to come back to council, and that's clear. It's been approved. So it's not going to come back to council. It's going to be delegated to. So what, we're going to build a dog shed up the back here of the swimming pool? Is that what we're going to do? Because we won't know about it. Mittagong swimming pool.
Thank you. You told
what a mess that was. Let alone the civic centre. Do we have a contract here yet?
I put the amendment as moved by Councillor Turland and seconded by Councillor Halstead. All in favour of the amendment, please raise your hand. Councillors Turland, Halstead and Scandrett. Those against. Councillors Andrews, Whipper, Markwart, McLaughlin and Gare. I declare the amendment lost. All in favour of the motion, please raise your hand. Same way. Thank you. If you want your names recorded, then that is done. Thank you. Now we move to 9.1, Station Street upgrade.
7.3, you're going to deal with that.
That is the one we've just done with.
Okay, so we're now on to 9.1 and Mr. Robert Smart. No, who's going? Mr. Paul.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Through you, the report before council this evening, I want to preface it by saying that this report was requested by council back in early February of this year. I was asked to give a date. I gave a date, which was today, to present this report. I've delivered on that. So there is no, how can I put it, any reason to think that this report has been rushed in any way. This is the date I promised it would be delivered, and council asked me to deliver it on this date. The report before council is not a review of the Station Street project, the merits or otherwise of it, or whether it's going ahead. The council has already determined that matter, and the direction that I have from the council is to try and keep this project moving. As councillors are aware, it has been a long and protracted matter to deal with some third parties in terms of trying to get this project moving. And I'm talking about specifically Sydney Trains and State Rail and Transport New South Wales. They are the bodies that I've had to deal with over the last 3 to 4 years in terms of trying to move matters forward that affect the delivery of this project. The matters that I'm talking about specifically are dealt with in the report. That relates to the alignment of the northern end of the Station Street project. The original design required for the slip road and the northbound lane to run through the land which council currently has a car park on, but also it impacted significantly on the car park that is owned by Sydney Trains. Now that has been, up until recently, a significant sticking point with Sydney Trains. We tried many times to negotiate around alternative parking options with that design. The long and the short of it is that Sydney Trains would not accept that in any way, shape or form. Their issue was that they wanted as many car spaces as possible on the western side of the roadway. They were not prepared to accept additional car spaces on the eastern side of the roadway in the vicinity of the Memorial Park. So that just became a sticking point. Now that has gone on for some years. In actual fact, we started discussions with Sydney Rail some 5 years ago when we wrote to them. It has been a very difficult process. I would say to you, until the Mayor, the General Manager and myself met with Minister Toole in July of last year, I would say that we wouldn't be in the situation we're in now, because as a result of that deputation to the Minister, it did take a little while, but the Minister, through Transport New South Wales, appointed a senior officer to be the single point of contact between council and the third parties to try and assist us to broker an arrangement that was suitable for council to allow the Station Street project to proceed, but also to meet the requirements of Sydney Trains, State Rail, Transport New South Wales, if you like. As councillors are aware, as that conversation evolved, we came to you with a proposal to alter the alignment of the most northern part of the Station Street upgrade and to alter the alignment of the roundabout. Now that was something that was conceived by a council officer internally as a potential option. So we explored that with Sydney Trains and Transport New South Wales over a period of time and got tentative agreement to get that design approved. What it has done is removed the slip lane and basically moved the north and south lane further to the east. What that has done has allowed more spaces to be provided to Sydney Trains in the precinct in front of the Bowral Railway Station and on the western side of the road alignment. In terms of the number of spaces, no, it's not 141 spaces which are currently there, and that was an issue. So we had to discuss and further negotiate that in terms of how we would, I guess, to be frank, placate Sydney Trains in terms of sufficient parking for what they believed was the needs of their commuters, as well as the residents of Bowral on the council side of the ledger. So we floated the idea of additional parking at the Mittagong railway station. Now initially that was not accepted, but after providing them with some concept designs, they started to warm to the idea. So where are we now? Well, we have, via email, an in-principle agreement to the revised design, which is in the report. If you just give me a moment, I'll just get the pages to give you the page number. So the council report has a number of attachments, and on page 18 you have a concept plan which shows you the original alignment in grey, so that has the slip lane and the separation of the north and south lane from the Memorial Park. But what that does is removes the parking on the western side of Station Street. Overlaid over the top of that, you have what is now the concept design, which removes that slip lane, moves the north and south lane further to the east towards the Memorial Park, and provides that additional parking in front of the Bowral Railway Station. That is the concept that Sydney Trains has said that they now will accept, provided that we also provide additional car spaces at the Mittagong Railway Station. And the report speaks to those two issues as a solution that will be accepted by Sydney Trains. We are waiting for a Heads of Agreement document to come to us. It's with senior officers within Sydney Trains and Transport New South Wales at the moment for their review. It has to be signed off at the top level of Sydney Trains and Transport New South Wales. So there are processes that document needs to go through, and that's taken a little longer than I expected. But I'm still being advised by the senior officer from Transport New South Wales, who has been appointed to manage this process, that he is very confident that that will happen in the not too distant future. If we get sign off on that, then in terms of the parking issues for Sydney Trains, assuming the council accepts these recommendations tonight, then that's resolved. The implications of that, though, are, however, that the pin oaks are going to be more greatly impacted than what was proposed under the original design. And the reality is that based on this concept design, the 8 pin oaks on the western side of Station Street would need to be removed. And shortly I'm going to ask Mr Rob Smart, who is an arborist and landscape architect who's been engaged to assist us in dealing with the landscape matters of this project, to speak to you more about why those 8 trees would need to go, why in actual fact it may actually be a good long-term succession plan to take those 8 pin oaks out, and the fact that we are also proposing to put 5 super advanced pin oaks back in once the road realignment is done and the roadworks is pretty much completed. But rather than steal any more of his thunder, I might ask Mr Smart to come forward now, and he's going to speak a little bit more in detail so that people understand why we believe we can't retain those 8 pin oaks and why it would be prudent for council to make the decision to remove them, and why putting 5 super advanced pin oaks back in their place in the long term is actually probably a good plan. So I'll ask Mr Smart to speak to that now.
Over to you, Mr Smart.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here tonight. As I've been introduced, I'm a registered landscape architect and a registered consulting arborist with over 30 years experience. I am the director of Arterra Design, and for the last decade or two I have been working extensively in trying to resolve issues around trees and complex infrastructure and other large projects. It's somewhat of a speciality, and I'm engaged by many government departments and local councils to assist in these sorts of projects. If we could go to the first slide, please. The trees, I'm going to have to be very quick. I've got 5 minutes to talk you through this. The existing trees, as you see them here, they are an avenue. They are valued. They are visually and historically significant. There's no doubt about that. They were planted in the 1940s. They are now 80 years old. You can see here that basically the trees on the eastern side or the Memorial Park side are on one side of the road, and we've got the western trees in between the road and the current station car park. Now what we have here is we have an existing station street that's running between them, and that's a rather significant point. The other thing we have to remember is trees are living things. They live, they grow, and they die. Now, the research that I have undertaken at the moment would suggest that the effective lifespan of a pin oak in Australia is somewhere around about 100 to 120 years. I didn't make that up. That's research by other people that have suggested that that's a fairly common age for this species. That means that these trees only have about 20 to 40 years effective lifespan, particularly in a heavily used urban environment. Trees are also basically big biological engines. They suck up water from the ground through their roots, they transport it through their trunks to the leaves, they convert that via sunlight and turn it into sugars so that they live. If we go to the next slide, please. You can see here that the avenue is made up of the trees on the eastern side and the western side. The trees on the eastern side are particularly large and prominent specimens. They're very visually significant in relation to the park. The trees on the western side have struggled, obviously. They are about half the size of the trees on the eastern side, and they are now also experiencing some significant dieback. So the trees on the east are very good trees, and they have the road running next to them, and that is a benefit. The trees on the west have been surrounded by pavement and the car park on both sides, and they've obviously struggled. There's quite a difference in the condition. If we can go to the next slide, please. These photos were taken a few weeks ago at the end of summer, and you can see here that several of the trees that we're talking about have extensive dieback in their upper canopy, and they're not very healthy trees, and that is probably as a result of their ageing condition and the conditions that they've been growing in. If we could go to the next slide, please. Now, trees have roots. This is an illustrative diagram of a typical tree, and the most important thing I want to show you here is that the roots extend out in a plate-like fashion around the tree, usually much further than the drip line of the canopy. And there are two zones that are commonly recognised in the arboricultural industry at the moment. One is called the tree protection zone, which is sort of the minimum area that a tree is calculated as requiring around it to maintain its existence and health. The second zone, which is a smaller zone closer to it, is known as the structural root zone. And that is an area where once the roots or the roots are severed or impacted greatly, that not only affects the health and condition of the tree quite markedly, it also means that the tree may become structurally unstable. Next slide, please. If you don't believe me how trees grow, such as these pin oaks, these photos here show you a very typical scenario of roots under the ground where the soil has been washed away and excavated, so you can see what that happens. You can see the roots are typically very shallow, only 300 to 400 mils below the surface usually. We've got example, we can see here, these are the existing trees on the eastern side, and you can see cracks in the curb and gutter and the asphalt, which would indicate that there would be large roots running out underneath that. And given that the road was probably constructed in the early 1900s to specifications that are probably less than today's standard for road construction, there's probably going to be some reasonable soil under that, and that's accommodating the growth of the trees at the moment. As the Deputy GM pointed out, the grey there was the previous design, which was a little further away from the western trees than the red lines, which indicates the new design. And the critical point here is that we now got a road that is coming, instead of the car park that was proposed in the previous scheme, that was going to just sit on the existing road and provide a fairly non-impactful outcome. We've now got one of the main southbound lanes now running through the middle of the avenue. We've also got the western part of the road coming much closer to the trees, significantly closer in some instances, and that is to accommodate the car park for the station. Next slide. So when we look at those western trees, we've got 5 trees that just can't even be retained because they're sitting in the middle of the proposed road design. What we're really talking about then is the 3 remaining trees in the middle. Now this is probably the most significant slide to pull up. The trees on the left-hand side of the slide are those that are fronting the park. We've then got the existing major road going between the 2 trees, and then you've got onto the right-hand side, you've got the western side trees and the station car park. Now, we believe we can make the road work where it is currently shown going between the trees, and that can be just used as the carriageway for the southbound part of the street. We can build over the top of that. It's already an existing pavement that takes trucks and buses as it is. The engineers believe that they can build up the pavement on top of that, so in theory that road part can happen with very little impact to the existing trees. On the western side, the car park is not a particularly well constructed pavement. It is not suitable for carrying large trucks and buses. And what you can see with the red hatching there is that the road is coming much, much closer to the trees. And because those western trees only had the car park on top of them, if we start to have to build roads next to them, we're going to have to dig down to create the necessary capacity for that road to be constructed, and that's going to have a massive influence on the roots and structure of that tree. And it's also going into what you can see there, the structural root zone. So if we start to sever and impact roots, then the tree becomes structurally unstable as a structure. You can also see, sorry, go back. Just there, the foliage, which I'll show you in another slide in a few seconds. The foliage on those trees on the western side is also quite low. The upper foliage has died back and we've got extensive decline. And so the only healthy foliage is on the low side facing the car park, which is going to have to be pruned up just to accommodate any trucks and bus clearance and things like that. So next slide, please. Road construction is an inherently disruptive process, and it requires excavation below the ground, compaction, removal of topsoil, and I've just shown you the image where basically that's where all the roots are, and to construct a road of a suitable standard is going to have to involve that kind of excavation, which would remove most of the roots. This diagram indicates basically that nominal tree protection zone which you saw in that indicative sketch of a tree, and we are basically impacting over a third of the existing tree root zone, sometimes up to 40%, and sometimes on both sides of the trees. But perhaps more significantly is the next slide, where these little orange circles represent those structural root zones. And what happens there is that you can see that we've got curb and gutter and road construction happening right up to and inside that structural root zone. If that happens, those roots will be there. You've seen the pictures of how roots grow. They will be severed and the tree will potentially be unstable. And what happens then? It may not be... next slide, thanks. When those roots are severed, the tree might not fail immediately. It may take weeks, it may take years, but eventually when a strong wind comes, that tree may blow over. And the problem is that in Bowral, your strongest winds come from the west, and we've just basically impacted and removed most of the roots on the western side of those three trees. So this is a highly likely outcome. Next slide, please. This is the picture I was sort of telling you about at the moment. The foliage of those trees, and the healthiest foliage is low, and it's overhanging the car park, which is not a problem for a car park, but if you want a 4 metre, 4.5 metre clearance for a semi-trailer and a truck, a lot of that foliage is going to be lost. So not only the roots, but the foliage, and this is affecting the tree as a biological entity. Next. What we have is an opportunity here. I value the trees as much as anyone. I'm a landscape architect and arborist. I love trees. I don't like removing them, but I do have to deal with these sort of historic avenues. And the opportunity here is that we put all of our efforts into retaining the eastern side, and we can do that by building up the roadway over the existing roadway, which provides already a suitable substructure. We excavate and create a wonderful median strip environment in which we can plant purpose-bought and secured large trees with adequate soil volume, adequate drainage, adequate depth, adequate setbacks from curbs and gutters, and put them into this new median. And if in doing that, we get to create the median we want, we also get to create the road in the way that it needs to be constructed to meet current engineering and RMS standards. Next slide. And we have a rare opportunity which the council have taken on board. We've sourced 5 very, very large and mature existing pin oaks that are growing within a wholesale nursery in Sydney. They're already 6 to 7 metres tall. They're in 1,500 litre containers and they have been secured. So what we have is we can take those 3 trees which are in poor condition, only 15 metres tall, and replace them in a purpose-built median strip with adequate soil and resources, and those trees could go in day one at least 7 metres in height and continue that avenue. These, as I said, trees will live and they will die, and we will need to replace them at some point, and we have this opportunity now to see this as a succession plan and allowing this historic avenue to continue, I think. So this is the proposal. All the trees on the eastern side are retained and protected. We put in 5 new trees with similar spacing to the ones that we've taken out, but in the appropriate position within the median. Next slide. And that's the summary of what I've just said. Hopefully I haven't gone too far over time.
I think it was very worthwhile that you gave that address, Mr. Smart. There's been a lot of angst about this programs and project. So the questions is from Councillor McLaughlin.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Smart. That was a good presentation that we'd previously had, but for the community to see this, I think it's important. My question is, with regard to those super advanced trees that we're putting in that are 6 metres, are we talking about sort of like the area around them being restricted so that they're not sort of bonsai, they will grow and get to a substantial size like the other side? And the other question I have is, how many of the camellias, the heritage listed camellias, will be affected with regard, and can they be accommodated somewhere? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smart.
Yes, I can answer that. So I spend a great deal of time working out soil volumes and capacities for trees in confined environments. There are numerous scholarly articles on how to work that out. We've measured the area of the median strip as it's currently designed. It's about 318 square metres. If we can put in soil to a depth of about 900 or a metre that is adequately drained, that gives us a fairly good soil volume of about 300 odd metres. We're proposing to put 5 trees. That would mean that those trees have about 40 or 50 cubic metres of soil at their disposal, which I believe is an adequate amount of soil for a mature pin oak in perpetuity, particularly if they're sharing that environment with each other.
Thank you.
So, second question,
yes.
in terms of the camellias, due to the road alignment, some of the camellias are still impacted. By the road moving over the way it has, less of the camellias are impacted than they were under the previous scheme. At the moment, I think we're down to 3 camellias being removed and 3 camellias being proposed to be transplanted.
To the railway side.
Their exact position as to where they're being transplanted hasn't been confirmed because we're waiting for confirmation of this direction.
Thank you. Would you like to comment, Mr. Paul?
Oh, look, only to sum up, Mr. Mayor, if before debate.
No, there won't be.
Okay.
We're taking questions.
Okay.
So.
Well, look, the only other thing that I will mention is that the concept design has been approved in principle by RMS. We've submitted the works as executed documents to get final approval for that, but council staff and our contractor that's doing the design work have worked with the RMS. So that was another critical thing that we needed to make sure that the roundabout design met their needs and met their requirements because it interacts with a state road, and we've got that approval in writing.
Thank you. Question from Councillor Scandrett.
Thank you. Please excuse my back to you, Mr. Smart. The question to Mr. Smart is, okay, so the trees that are going to remain on the park side, what is the anticipated remaining life in those on the same argument?
Through you, Acting General Manager, Mr Smart.
Well, yes, I would say that those trees, given my research, have a effective lifespan of somewhere around 120 years. So basically, they're already 80 years old. I would suggest that in some time in the next 30 to 40 years, the council will be facing a similar issue with those trees potentially declining and needing to find a replacement strategy. Now, obviously, that might be a completely different strategy because they are adjoining a park, and they might not all decline at the same time. So you may have the ability to replace those trees one at a time, or every second one, and things like that. So the strategies for replacing those trees at that time could be quite different to what you're dealing with now on the western side. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, it's recommendation. Question? No, you haven't. Councillor Whippers, he's moving the motion. Yours will be amendment. Yeah, righto. And seconded by Councillor McLaughlin.
The question is on page 11. We have property acquisition, the project roadmap and the risk. And some of the questions that I'm asking for is as simple as how much is this all going to cost? And one being the acquisition, the land in Barrel, I think that's been resolved, but I don't know how much we've paid for it. But also the land in Mittagong to build the car park, but also the delays. What will they cost? What is the budget now going to be looking forward for this project?
Mr Paul.
Look, there's multiple questions there. In terms of the land in Mittagong, the proposal is that the land will be leased to council for $1 a year if demanded, so a peppercorn rent. The land is owned by State Rail. It's currently part of a lease to ARTC, but as part of the heads of agreement, they are proposing to excise that land out of that lease agreement and to make that land available to council on a peppercorn rental. Council will obviously have to build the car park, and that's part of the recommendations before you this evening. I'm not sure, Councillor, what was the other question? I'm sorry.
Cost, the overall cost.
Well, councillors, as we've said many times, the cost escalation factor of delays on major projects is an issue for us, and we'll have to deal with that in the 2020-21 budget. There will be an additional cost to build the car park in Mittagong. The high-level estimate I've got at the moment, with a fairly fat contingency, is $1 million. That is a much cheaper option, if I can use those words, than some of the alternatives that we were trying to look at in terms of doing something in Barrel. At the end of the day, this is the only way I can see this project moving forward.
Thank you. You've had a question, Councillor Scandrett. Do you want a question to Mr Paul? Thank you.
Mr Paul, this whole project started with the idea of getting heavy traffic off Bong Bong Street.
Well,
I don't agree.
No, I think that's not the correct question.
Well, making Bong Bong Street safer, Mr Mayor, whichever way you want to play it, but it's now grown out of control and we're not even building a bypass. My question is that this is, we haven't got the standards yet from the RMS, have we? Approval for this road construction, for the actual, what's the word I'm looking for? To make it the, I'm sorry? Yeah, I'm trying to come up with, it's got to be a state road, that's what I'm looking for, right? And we haven't got yet a pavement design that has been approved for a state road, is that correct?
Councillor, what I said to you a little while ago was that council staff, council's contractor that's doing the detailed design work, senior engineers from RMS have, over a period of time, consulted on the design for a high-level consultation on the design for this project, for the northern end, for the roundabout, and we've got their concurrence. We do need to submit the final detailed design to them, and that will be happening, or has already happened, as I understand it. about to happen. But our belief is that at this point in time, that will be approved.
As a state road?
No.
That's what- that was my question.
You're putting words in my
No.
mouth.
I'm
Bong Bong
asking-
Street is not a state road. Sorry, Bong Bong Street is a
Station
state
Street.
road. Station Street is not a state road. Bong Bong Street is.
And are the RMS offering state road approval for Station
No.
Street?
No, that's not part of this discussion.
Right. And
Councillor Scandrett, how many questions? You're allowed one question.
well, it's one of the biggest issues of this council.
I know it's the
Mr.
biggest issue, Councillor Scandrett. It's been going on for 35 years.
Well,
45.
45 years, you're saying? Oh,
One
yes.
more question, Councillor Scandrett.
And in terms of the state government agencies you're dealing with, Mr. Paul, you're saying that they're all quite happy with the taking of the parking for commuters from Barrel to off-street parking, from Barrel to Mittagong. What consultation have we done with the businesses in Barrel who are about to lose all of this parking?
Mr Paul?
Well, Councillor, as you're aware, we went through extensive consultation with the public in 2017. In terms of the overall yield for car parking, that's detailed on page 11. So current car spaces in the Barrel... Can I finish with my answer, please? So in terms of the existing car spaces in and around the Station Street, Kirkham Road vicinity, there are 347 spaces. With what's proposed, with Kirkham Road, Station Street, Wattle Lane, there'll be 380 spaces in that precinct, and there'll be an additional 80 spaces in Mittagong. Sorry, 70 spaces in Mittagong.
Thank you. Councillor Markwart.
That didn't answer my question. That just didn't answer my question, Mr.
It's the only answer I'm giving.
That's the only answer that he's...
So the businesses have not been consulted with this plan, nor of the public, not being consulted.
Thank you, Councillor Scandrett. Councillor Markwart.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. A question for Mr Paul, just regarding, there was, the New South Wales Government did a study, I believe, or project review on this project. Can you briefly summarise for me the findings?
The
and
deep dive review.
Yeah, look, there was a deep dive review done in early 2018. My understanding is that was predicated based on some concerns that were raised with the Department and Premier and Cabinet. So Infrastructure New South Wales engaged 2 independent consultants, very senior people, to come and to have a look at the project in its entirety, and that included, was the project still valid? Was it addressing the issues that it was supposed to address, and whether council was managing that in an appropriate way, and whether the project should continue. Now, in broad terms, the findings were that it was yes to all of those things, but what it did do was identify some critical issues. Those critical issues were to resolve the property matters with Sydney Trains and also the property acquisition, to deal with any parking around that, any parking issues around that, and to get the design signed off by the RMS. So at this point in time, I have a letter from the RMS that says that they agree in principle to the design, subject to the detailed construction drawings being provided to them. We have, via emails, consensus among the parties about the parking solution. There is a heads of agreement document being produced as we speak, which, once agreed, will be signed off by the General Manager, and Council's already delegated to the General Manager to do that in a previous resolution of Council, and by the senior bureaucrats within, or a senior bureaucrat within Sydney Trains and within Transport New South Wales. So, in my mind, that's dealt with those issues identified in that deep dive review. The Council needs to be satisfied with the solutions that are being offered in this report this evening as a way forward. If the Council is not satisfied with the solutions that are being offered here, then my advice is I'm open to any other alternatives that Council may suggest, but I would suggest to you that that will probably more than likely see the end of this project if we don't go forward what's here tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Turlin, question?
You know, you just mentioned that the alternative design here, that we have to approve it,
But the community have not seen this change at all, except for this document being put in Friday's business paper and on the internet, let alone Mr Smart's presentation. So you just said major changes,
Question?
Well, that's the question.
Okay.
They need to be, it really needs to be re-advertised.
Well, look, my response is,
major changes.
until such time as I've got council endorsement of something, it's very difficult to put it out on exhibition. That's a matter for council. If you want to further consult around this, well, that will be a further delay in terms of this project proceeding, and that's a matter for council. If that's council's wish, I'll do as I'm directed. In terms of Mr Smart's presentation, we've actually got a version of that we've already got ready to go on our website after this afternoon's meeting, which will be available for the public to view. It's a slightly longer version with a little bit more information, so it's ready to go. It will be on council's website tomorrow.
Thank you. Councillor Whipper?
Sorry.
So, Mr Mayor, I'm happy to move the recommendation. I would like, however, in point 2, to actually put in there, if we could, that council prepare a replacement strategy in the event that trees on the eastern side of the road deteriorate. So we'll have enough time, I think, to do that, and I'll speak to that, Mr Mayor. That's fine, yeah, okay. So I appreciate, Mr Smart, that presentation. I think it sort of explains quite a lot. The biggest issues, obviously, with this project are, number one, council's inability to make a decision on that and to actually have the fortitude to actually project into the future and meet the needs of future citizens and residents of the Shire. Number two, the parking and the trees, obviously. I know that council staff have done an amazing job, our engineers, at looking at reconfiguring the site to save as many trees as possible. And it hasn't been an easy task working with RMS, RTEC and State Rail. They're bureaucracies indeed. So to navigate the way around those has been no small thing. Looking at the presentation and those trees on the western side, it's easy to see that those trees on the western side are severely compromised and really almost at the end of their useful life expectancy. So I think this transition plan is a very good one, and one that should be adopted, because from what I'm hearing, the conditions that will be created for those newly planted advanced species will be much healthier, and those trees will have a better environment to grow and be able to flourish and to live a more, what can I say, a better life than those ones that are obviously experiencing on the west. My proposal that we look at a strategy for the eastern side is that as those trees start to deteriorate over the years, they could be replaced one or two at a time, and therefore that avenue will exist into the future if we've got those trees on hand. So I think we need to project in the future. Like it or not, things are changing and the demand on traffic is quite unreal. Anybody that uses that road would know that there are key times that where there's almost gridlock in that section of road. Like it or not, we're going to have to make a decision, and that involves obviously removal of trees, but not in the sense that we'll be losing anything, because I think if we've just got a little bit of vision and can see the longer term, and it's not all about us. I mean, what we're talking about, the useful life expectancy of those trees is 20 to 40 years. That's short-sighted. If we can replace those trees, continue that avenue for another 120 plus years, if we have a good transition plan for the future, everybody benefits. But for I think those that want to maintain those struggling trees in their entirety and in their current form, I think that's a little bit short-sighted, a little bit selfish. And I think this plan gives us an opportunity to have a better outcome in terms of traffic and also the vegetation and the way we, if we value those trees, we wanted to see them thrive in a healthy environment, and that's where I believe we're creating here. So, councillors, I think we need to bite the bullet and have the courage to make a decision and move forward. We've been talking about this, 40 odd years. If we did this 40 odd years ago, those trees would have been a lot easier to remove and we probably could have replaced them or transplanted them, but at the moment that's impossible. So councillors, I know we've spoken about this for a long, long time, and my sense is that the majority of councillors do want to move this forward. And I think this is the best outcome because we all love trees and it's hard to make a decision to remove any tree. But I think based on the presentation and the science behind this and the logic of maintaining those trees in a better condition in the future, I think it's a no-brainer.
Thank you, Councillor Whipper. Councillor Turlin, do you have an amendment? Yeah. Now, is it... How is there a big wording?
Yeah, it's all right. I'll work it through. The council suspend the work on Station Street upgrade until the pandemic time passes and our way of life returns to normal as we know it. That's the first one.
Pandemic. Until the pandemic passes and life returns to normal
as we know it.
As we know it.
Number two, that the project be shovel ready to apply for federal and state grants in the future.
That the project be shovel ready for future grants, government grants.
Federal and state.
Federal and state. Yes?
Yeah. Number three, that the project be re-publicised or re-advertised as the changes are too large from the first approved project.
That the project be re-advertised because the...
changes are much larger from the first approved project.
Are much larger than the first approved project.
You can change
it's quite
it.
precise to say that.
Reconsult.
Reconsult it.
But the funds that have been set aside to redevelop.
That the monies that have been set aside
be diverted to help our community through this very trying, difficult time.
That the monies be set aside to help the community in this very difficult and trying time.
It says be diverted.
Diverted, yeah.
Be diverted.
It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And 5, that all senior staff take a 25% salary cut with no bonuses for 12 months.
No, I won't permit that. I won't permit it.
You won't permit it?
I won't permit it.
Number 2 is not.
That is entering into the operational affairs of council, which council has no control over. As such, I will not allow that
So
to be
you're happy
number
for everybody
5.
else in Australia to...
No,
have a
Councillor
tough time?
Turland, I will not allow it.
You won't?
No.
Okay. That's up to you.
Number 2 should be made shovel ready. I think you said.
Yeah, okay. Whatever.
What is the project?
The-
No, just let it go. Just let it go. Councillor
Projects
Turlin's
being
wording,
made,
as long as
shovel-ready
the,
to apply the state
as long as it's a legal
project be
motion, it is permitted.
consulted to the public due to significant changes.
Well, you could answer my question.
I'm asking the staff not to become involved, thank you. This is a contentious and ongoing debate. Is there anything else, Councillor Turlin?
I'm happy with that because the other parts were not allowed.
Okay. Will you speak to your amendment, please?
Yes, but I need a seconder. Councillor Housestead, thank you.
Councillor McLaughlin? Councillor Turlin?
Okay, we've already seen
Seconded, Councillor Housestead.
We've already seen a plan come forward tonight which was huge changes which the public have not seen except for the last few days, which I find is incredible. As I said in the amendment, that the public needs to be concerned and to see what the changes are. Nobody in Mittagong realises now there's going to be another 100 odd car parks, whatever it is, in Mittagong. None of those residents on the southern side of the...
Councillor Turlin, McLaughlin. Yeah, I know. Councillor Turlin.
Anyway, so as I said, that we should re-advertise this project to the community, hear the people in Mittagong to have their voice on this project, as they are now affected by a project that's in barrel. Don't get me wrong, I agree with this project. It should be fine. I agree with the trees to be removed. That's fine. But what's happened, it's changed too much from the original proposal. And we have a duty of care to the public at large on both Mittagong and Barrel to show the changes, let alone the prices and the costs. If you look on page 11, there could be enormous costs that could come back into play here. There's 5 or 7, 6 or 7, and we don't even know what the cost will be in theory for a car park. I mean, we said $1 million, but it could turn up to $2 million. Who would know? And we've still got all this other work on page 11 that we have to deal with yet. So as I said, I agree with the project, but what I do not agree with is the timing. At right now, we are going through the biggest disaster the world has seen. This is our second world war we never faced. It would be irresponsible for us to move forward and spend something like $17 million plus whatever the costs might be, another $2 or $3 million by the time this project gets started. Why the rest of the country and our people, our residences, are doing it tough. What you're going to see is people won't be able to pay their rent, their rates, and so on. Everybody in this whole Shire and state and Australia will be going backwards. And we're about to spend $20 odd million over the next 2 years, if it gets to that, because it's 17 million already, with all these unknowns on page 11. It is not reasonable to go forward on this project. And do you think the state and federal government, after this thing settles down in a year's time, they're not going to throw money at projects that are ready, shovel ready to stimulate the economy? They'll fund the whole lot. Shovel ready projects. We've said the same thing in the Birrimba overpass, which is a failed project. 5 million over budget. It is shovel ready. That's the motion that went forward. And I find it extraordinary that the 4 items that have been put forward as a recommendation, there's nothing in there about re-advertising it to the community, letting them have their say. They are paying, Mr. Councillor Scander, please. They are paying for this, the ratepayers. 7.5 from the sale of a loader in Wollongong. Pennies in relation to now it's now going to 3 times as much. The community are going to pay for it. They need to have their say. And we are not allowing them if you allow this motion to go forward. I'm not saying shelve this project, I'm saying hold it back.
Thank you. Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you. I'll speak against this amendment because I think now is the time to stimulate jobs in our community. As we heard the Prime Minister say the other night, every person that has a job is paramount. And I think to be cutting projects now is the wrong way. I think if you look at what history tells us, Mr Mayor, in the Depression that we had in 1933, governments closed things down, slowed everything down, and it had the worst result. The worst result. The problem was then that the stimulus came too late, councillors. We need to keep jobs going. We need to keep as much as we can going while we can. And I think to stop this project and stop other projects, for more consultation whenever that happens, we've got $7.5 million sitting from the state government. I don't know how long they're going to leave it sitting there for us to use it, but I think we had. You might be right. So we've got a time limit there, Mr Mayor. So I think it's important for us. It's important for the whole community. You know, the people that make cement, the people that, you know, pour cement, the people that do the roadworks. I mean, these people have valuable jobs in infrastructure. Now is not the time to close everything down. Those people that can work need to try and support our community going forward. I think all those people that can work from home are trying to do that. But obviously there's a lot that can't. So if we can get through this pandemic with distancing, whatever we need to do with PPE, let's try and keep things going. So I don't think this is the approach. Councillor Turner says he likes the project needs to go ahead, it just needs to stall. I think that's the wrong way to go at this moment. Fair enough, we were out there in 2017 with the community and we got the overall response that this project got the tick. It's been there, as you said, for 35 years. Councillor Halstead's talked about it being on the books for such a long time. I think now is the time where you move things forward, just like Merrygang Street, like all the projects, that we need to go forward and we need to pass our budget and we need to keep going forward as well as we can. Now, if the state government kicks in and the federal government kicks in money to local government, and we've heard our President Linda suggests that money should come through to local government to stimulate and keep people in jobs.
Thank you. Councillor Halstead and then Councillor Scandrett.
I agree with the amendment put forward by Councillor Turland. Also, generally agree with the project. And yes, I have talked about it being around for a long time. Well, there's at least 3.5 years we've talked about it this time around, and where are we? Not there yet. But I have great concerns about, first of all of a sudden we get 8 trees are going to be taken, not the 2 or 3 we spoke about before. Whether we listen to the expert over here or not is another thing. He might be right, he might be wrong, who knows. But we need to be mindful of where we're going in terms of commitment. So generally, what we should be doing, I think, is deferring it. I've got one word here, defer. Defer until such time as something like Councillor Turland's put together. Loss of trees are unbelievable. It is a major change. This is the issue. It's a major change, which I think Councillor Turland referred to. It's a major change from what, for example, the community commented upon. Now, there's some pluses and there's some minuses. But there might be people in the community, for example, that oppose the idea of, offsetting a job in Barrel with something that's going to be in Mittagong. Well, I think that probably could be a possible positive. But, it's just not the right time to be delving into this at the moment. With all due respect, I dealt with the RED scheme many years ago, Councillor McLaughlin, which you know nothing about, I wouldn't think. Maybe you've heard of it, but that was certainly a stimulus. That's the sort of thing that government did give stimulus for, and it worked. To go ahead at this stage, I think, quite frank, is I just can't believe that there'd be any thought to do it with what's happening at the moment. I mean, if you think it's all just going to disappear, this pandemic, in the next 6 months, you're definitely kidding yourself, because this is going to go on for a long time. I've got no doubt about that. And I'm sure others sitting in this room think exactly the same. So I support very strongly what Councillor Turland.
Thank you. Councillor Scandrett.
Mr Mayor, I'm going to talk about the recommendation at this point, which I notice has no comment about reconsulting with the community, and yet councillors here are talking about the fact that the design has changed considerably. Why does that recommendation not have any reconsultation with the community? It's not certainly what was there with the deep dive review. So why doesn't it have reconsultation in it? Why don't you put that in?
You're asking a rhetorical question.
Oh, well, it doesn't say in the recommendation that you reconsult, right?
No.
No, and you should. Because the whole point about this is that the community have been very upset all the way through about the lack of consultation. The last meeting was in September 2017. I mean, we've all received letters in the last 48 hours, and that's only because the community only saw this since Friday night. But the Australian Garden History Society, very clear message from them. They want to be consulted with. The National Trust, who are saying quite clearly there are social issues and cultural issues here, right? There are, and we're not talking to the community. I mean, the National Trust is on their way to listing this precinct on the draft National Trust register. I mean, and that is all about the pin oaks that we're talking about. A very senior member of Council's Heritage Committee has written in, Laurel Cheetham, and she has made some very good points here, which basically all say this be withdrawn or deferred, if you wish, and then it be reconsulted, right, for 2 months. And we're not doing that, Mr Mayor. You know, we're not dealing with the public. All of the councillors here who stood for election 4 years ago promising consultation, where is it? Major change here. Because this is still not the bypass that it originally was. And I don't see in any of the motion or the amendment any mention of planning for the future. I mean, Councillor Toon, you might consider just popping in your point 2 on this project and stage 2. Why not? If there's going to be money out there,
Thank you,
why wouldn't we?
Scandrett.
Yes.
We'll have to wait for Mr House to...
Yes, okay, but it would be point 2 just to be changed, the project and its stage 2. The fact that there is no mention of the acquisition that is currently on the books of land in Kirkham Road, right, which we have moved to acquire that land, that was...
No. Point to you. We have not moved to acquire it.
Did you not commence negotiations with the people who own the village of Barrel to acquire the grassland there? Yes or no?
That is a confidential matter.
It's not. It's been in our business paper, right?
Well, then you know the answer, Councillor Scandrett.
Well, yes,
you're using
and I'm
up
honest
your
about it. I'm honest about it.
your debating
I'm
time.
honest about it, Mr Mayor, and we have said that is the alternative car parking. Well, this motion suggests that the car parking is going to Mittagong.
Thank you. Councillor Mark Watt.
I'm rising to speak against the amendment. I'd like to commend Councillor McLaughlin for his comments about helping the economy over this period. It's absolutely essential we continue business as usual as much as possible. We are, or we should be, a role model for how things should be done. We can't cut back. We can't stand down our staff. We must support our staff and our community by spending the money we have. We don't want to give $7 million back to the state government, go in the coffers. We want to spend it here, and that's where we should spend it. It will help the community. I'd also like to refer to the comments about community consultation. There has been a lot of consultation over the years, over the 40, 50 years, well before my time on council. But as a matter of fact, when I wander around town, go shopping, what have you, I don't go out there as a councillor, I don't wear a council badge. But I do say to people, what do you reckon about this? What do you reckon about that? And this gives me a random feel. Statistically, you can argue it's invalid, but it gives me a feel for the community thoughts on these matters. And the community thoughts on this project generally are more towards go ahead. There are certain people, of course, who have a different view, and that's perfectly normal and perfectly entitled. But the average person in the street, certainly the most in Robertson and in Mossvale that I talk to, they are very, very keen to see this go ahead. So I refute the fact that we don't know what the community is thinking. I think we certainly do know. I've had a lot of phone calls recently over the last several days, and generally they start out by saying, I oppose the Barrel bypass. It is not a bypass. It is not a B bypass. It is a distributor road. Exit, entry into Barrel and going round Barrel. It is not a bypass. And often they come up with simply, do it down here, do it there, we can bypass Barrel. But it does not solve the problem of traffic congestion. And that's the prime reason we're looking at this now, combined to the other reason that Councillor Scandrett referred to. I also believe that there is an element of moving Bong Bong Street to a pedestrian-friendly solution and handing over Station Street in the longer term to the RMS. I would like that to happen. So this is the first step, and we need to go down there. I understand why council don't promote that, because it's so long in the future, it would just open a can of worms. But I have in my head that vision happening in 10 to 15, 20 years. Let's make Bong Bong a beautiful place for pedestrians. Let's plant a few trees there. And we can't do that unless we solve the traffic problem of Barrel. And this addresses that. Our traffic engineers have looked at all this and they've come up with an area that needs to be addressed. Number one, first and foremost, nothing else comes close to delivering the same benefit in terms of traffic. And that's this roundabout and that segment of Barrel. That needs to be addressed. And like Councillor Whipper said, we are playing with people's lives in the future. We don't want to kick this project down the road another 5 years, another 10 years. Don't we have the courage of our conviction? Most of the councillors around this table support this project. We shouldn't kick this down the road, we should make a decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Andrews? Yeah, because Councillor Scandrett has got his... You're speaking what, Councillor Scandrett?
For the amendment, Mr Mayor.
Then Councillor Andrews.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I support the recommendation. Obviously support the recommendation, as I have from the first second that this was presented to us back in 2016. And I acknowledge that for 30-odd or 40-odd years, as you mentioned, Mr Mayor, this has been a matter for council. Lord knows why it hasn't been resolved before now. Now we've got the opportunity. It wasn't too many weeks ago that we were briefed on what may occur, and we have been for some time screaming at senior staff to please resolve this matter in our turn. There was one dissenter, and only one dissenter. The other 8 councillors had that attitude that we need to resolve this matter and hopefully proceed in this term of council. Now, it's changed slightly. I don't understand why. Yeah, we are in hard times and difficult times. But Councillor Scandrett mentioned the community are against this. He should rephrase and say a part of the community may be against it, or even, I might add, a small part of the community. I, like Councillor Markwood, I do speak to probably 100 people in my business and otherwise, a day or a week, sometimes certainly 200, and I'm not exaggerating. Vast majority of them, because I would suggest that a vast majority of them 100% agree with it, but probably because they use that road early in the morning around 9 o'clock and late in the afternoon at 3 o'clock. I suggest that people that are against this project don't use that road at that time of the day because it's a darn nightmare. Something that we need to resolve and go forward with this. Councillor McLaughlin has given me another genuine argument, and I thank him for it because I hadn't thought about it. This is a very clear way that we can offer a stimulus package for our Shire, for our community. Jobs. We talk about it, but we don't seem to care too much when we're trying to push this back, or by spending the money elsewhere, we're just throwing it away, throwing the project out. Jobs. It'll create jobs predominantly for our local people. For God's sake, we've worked so hard, all of us, all but one of us, to see this through.
Thank you. No, there's been no point of order.
No, please, I'll finish and then you can have a swipe.
Excuse me, there is no point of order. There is no point of order.
Point of order, Mr Mayor.
There is no point of order.
And previously I was told I was a dissenter.
Thank you. Councillor Andrews.
If I may, Mr Mayor, please.
You have the right of the floor.
What are you doing? And 1 minute you're saying, yeah, that's me, I'm proud of it. The next minute you have
Councillor McLaughlin.
If I may, please.
You have the...
Sorry.
If I may, Mr Mayor, I wanted to stand up earlier. I was quite and very saddened by what went on here early in the evening. I could understand and see how visually upset or distressed members of our staff were. And by a few performing the role, acting the way they did earlier, it was a disgrace. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Scandrett.
Before I speak, Mr. just clarify it now, Councillor Housted. I asked Councillor Housted whether both the recommendation and the alternate include the words "and the bypass," so that they could stage two, yeah. Yeah, fine. Is that okay?
Or government funding later.
Yeah. And the words consultation, I've asked the Mayor to put in the recommendation. Yes. So, just make sure that's there. So the project and stage two be made shovel-ready, is that what you're saying? And the project and stage two be reconciled, I guess. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll start talking about...
No, the clock has already started, Councillor Scandrett.
We should have said that you wouldn't agree to it.
Excuse me, Councillor Scandrett, you are using up your time.
Mr. Mayor, you don't want to consult with the community. Why not? Councillor Turland and Councillor Housted and I do. We want to consult with the community on these substantive changes to the project that's in front of us. And I have to ask why you don't want to do that. And yet our code of meeting practice and everything talks about us being open and transparent and involved with the community, etc., and you're not doing that. So I invite you to change the recommendation to include consulting with the community, because it's been a substantial change.
Excuse me, Councillor Scandrett.
Oh, is the clock off?
Councillor Whipper is the move of the motion. You don't ask me.
Oh. Well, I'll throw it right around to all councillors. Why don't you put the word consultation in, Councillor Whipper included? Look, there's things that have changed that might come out of that consultation. Are you scared of those? I mean, here we go. The Brickworks have announced they're going to relocate out to near Boral. In fact, it is part of Boral. I don't know, Councillor McLaughlin, if you've got shares...
It's Councillor McLaughlin.
Sorry, out
Councillor
next to Boral, but and you mentioned concrete as being a big benefit here. I don't know if you have shares in Boral, Councillor McLaughlin, but if you do, that was probably an inappropriate thing.
Councillor McLaughlin.
Well, I knew that it had 2 years to go, Councillor, that grant. So there we go. Look, I mean, here we are. We have not got pressures on us. We can go out and look for additional funding. We can look at getting stage two up. We can re-examine whether we can go through the brickworks, which I think it was Councillor Housted said to us some time ago, way back. That was the preferred route, was to go down through the brickworks and fly over down there. And that's why Links Road was bought. I think Links Road was bought by somebody involved with your family, who was a councillor, Councillor Gare. Right? I think that's...
I beg your pardon.
Am I correct with that? When you...
excuse me.
No,
excuse me.
Okay, is that incorrect?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
I'll try and explain it.
No,
Who
don't.
Was the councillor?
Thank you, Councillor Scandrett.
I'll try and apologise.
Thank you, Councillor Scandrett.
I'm not going to sit down
Thank you, Councillor Scandrett.
I'm not going to sit down unless you let me fix that.
No.
Yeah, go for your life. Honestly. So, it was a former councillor.
Councillor Scandrett.
Probably your father, I think.
Councillor Scandrett, you are so far out of order, you could fall off the planet. Well, here we are. Thank you, turn off your light please, Councillor Scandrett.
Yes, Mr.
We're on the steeplechase. We have been jumping hurdles.
No, you were just lagging a lot.
No, yeah, that's after me. Thank you. You've had two goes. Councillor Turland.
What I'm trying to say is that this project should go ahead, but we should wait a bit longer. the money that we're going to put, it's already up to $17 or $16.3 million, and we have all these other items to reconsider yet. You have no idea how many people are not going to be able to pay their rates and rent. Already I've given 3 tenants 6 months rent free. Those people pay rates or they live in tented houses. They won't be able to pay it. Why do you think the federal government and the state is putting together packages to support people through this process? Because they won't have a job. They won't be able to afford their rates. They won't be able to afford their businesses. Employment will be lost for a long period of time. Worse than you've ever seen. You right? Are you right?
Councillor Turland?
You right? To spend any money now, when we've got a pack in the bank ready to spend on this project, are you guys serious? Do you think this is going to be spent tomorrow to build this project? Without any consultation of the changes? The whole thing tonight relates back to this project. This is why we're here tonight. The rest were smoke and mirrors. Waste of time. It's all to do with your election campaign in 2020 and possibly now 2021.
Oh, Councillors Turland, please do not make broad brush statements.
Do you mind not intervening, please?
Then I ask you to speak.
Stop. No, I am speaking.
No, you don't tell me to stop intervening. If I feel you're out of order, I will call you out of order.
Well, you need to listen while I speak. I have the floor. The issue is, it is public money. You are playing with public money. I look around the table here, and who's got the experience in doing any building work, engineering work? And there's not many. None. Councillor Housestead in designing, and me actually physically construction. You have no idea the cost that this is going to cost. This is moving target. You have the ability to help your community now. Put this money that's been put aside and help our community and still spend the money, as you say, to stimulate the community, but stimulate them in different ways. Help them pay their rates. Help them do other projects, which then all local people will be involved. Do you think this project is going to be built by a local person? Look at the 9.6 million on the Taj Mahal here. It's not built by locals. Locals have got this much of it. 2 parts of nothing.
Thank you, Councillor Turland.
Nothing.
As I was going to say, how horses falter at the last jump. We have managed to jump 7-foot barriers, 6-foot barriers, whatever, and we come to a 2-foot barrier and we trip because we really don't want to make the decision. And that is the way it is. We have seen councillors change from being so for it, let's get it, we've got to get it, the shovels in, we've got to get it going. And you all missed the point who are against it. This is the only option. There is no option B. If you don't accept this option, as Mr. Paul has said, then forget the project. And then we redirect the money. We have written to the government on a number of occasions pleading with them, please do not pull this money. And they have given us time. Councillor Markwart and Councillor McLaughlin and the 4 councillors who are supporting it are realists. We have to address the traffic issues. We have been clamouring since I've been on council. We've had the RMS up here before a lot of you were even in the chamber, asking if we upgrade Station Street, can we downgrade Bong Bong Street to make it, as been pointed out, a user-friendly place? Here's the opportunity. The first step, to bring Station Street up to RMS standards so we can make Bong Bong Street user-friendly. Yes, it's going to impact, and yes, there's going to be 8 oak trees gone, and yes, they're going to be replanted with super advanced trees of 6 metres. But no, here we go, let's trip over and go out. No alternates, there's no alternative, just go out on consultation. Nobody came up in their debate with a better design. There is no better design that we have been able to put together and present to the RMS for them to tick off, not us.
Well, I talked about the brickworks.
And as for the car parking in Mittagong, there is going to be the chance, as Councillor Turland has pointed out on many a time, if people go to drive to Campbelltown when they can go and drive to Mittagong and get on the train, not likely. That was the argument initially, that people would drive through. Well, there's the alternate. More parking for commuters in Mittagong and more users for the commuters. Thank you, Councillor Turland. So the guidelines have to be followed with the usage of this money. It will go back to the state. You hand back $7 million to the state, then go back in 12 months' time and say, well, we're ready for it now. We didn't support the guidelines and the new design, and that's the only design. We just went out on consultation knowing there's no other design. Councillor Whipper, your right of reply. Have the courage, have the fortitude, make a positive decision.
So, Mr Mayor, nobody, I don't think, in this council chamber has fought for trees for as long as I have. 30 years I've fought, tooth and nail on the floor of this council to protect trees. This is not a matter that one takes lightly, but one has to weigh up, all of the, all the factors surrounding this and make an informed decision. I think this replacement strategy is very sound. I think there's a lot of benefits to it. If we have a long-term replacement plan for those trees, it'll be like for like. That's one of the things I've fought for in this chamber for decades, and that's replacing lost trees with like trees in the same quantity, if not greater. So that's what it's all about. In terms of the stimulus argument, I think that's really appropriate and realistic. It will boost stimulus. These are hard times, they are uncommon times, they're unprecedented times in a lot of ways, but they will pass. I don't know that it's the role of local government to say, okay, there's a plague, let's fix it. There's a national disaster, let's jump in and fix that. We're bound, we're very limited in what we can provide, and we have to be realistic. We'd love to be able to do all those things. I'd love to make promises, that I'll never keep, but that's not very appropriate to do that. So I think if we defer today, we destroy. This is the death of the project. There's no doubt about it. What really concerns me is that around this table, 8 councillors, bar one, have spoke very consistently in the whole term of this council for completing this project on time before the end of the election. Now, there's been one councillor who's tried to defray it and keep it alive, hoping it will become an election issue. That's the reality of it. The rest of us have bonded together, we've seen the wisdom, we've seen the need, and people, the majority of people, crying out for improved access through Bowral. We've seen that. As I said, to get all those agencies together on side to accept this design is no small feat. These agencies are great obstacles, they always have been. So in terms of making a suggestion that this is electioneering, I would say turn the mirror on oneself, because what it is this is a decision that has to be made. And not just to make promises or sort of baseless promises. This is actually producing something. Now, if there were 3 councillors that are here tonight, would have been at our budget planning sessions earlier, they would have heard a little bit about Station Street. But it seems they were bunkering down somewhere, planning. I don't know what. It's just how the tables have turned. I think it's remarkable. I don't know what that's all about. One would have to ask themselves and just do some inner reflection as to what that might be about. But I think we need to have the courage of our convictions and make this decision tonight. If people vote against it, they were never convicted to it, were they? To delay this is to destroy the project and make it an election issue. So, councillors, please vote for the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Whipper. So I put the amendment that in relation to Station Street, that the project stand deferred, moved by Councillor Turland, seconded by Councillor Halstead. All in favour of the amendment? Councillors Scandrett, Turland and Halstead. Those against? Councillors Andrews, Whipper, Markwart, McLaughlin and Gare. I declare the amendment lost and the names will be recorded. All those in favour of the motion, please raise your hand. Councillors Andrews, Whipper, McLaughlin, Markwart and Gare, and those against. Councillors Scandrett, Turland and Halstead. I declare the motion carried. We now move on to, and thank you very much, Mr. Smart. It has been a long meeting for you, which should have been finished. And we move to the last item of the day, tender for Merrigang. Madam GM, tender for Merrigang Street reconstruction, subgrade stabilisation, moved by Councillor Whipper, seconded by Councillor Halstead. Any discussion? Put it. All in favour? Those against? Carried. And I'll ask the General Manager now to read that resolution. On Merrigang Street, it is 19.1.
Mr Mayor, where's it on that? It's not on there.
The tender for the Merrigang Street reconstruction, 11.1.
It's not on the sheet that's passed out this afternoon.
I think the number might have been wrong or something.
Yes, it's...
We did go through it.
Have you got that? What have you got recorded there, please?
11.1 was not included in
Then, no, we are not breaking the rules, Then, excuse me. Right? Thank you very much. The run sheet should have had 11.1. It has been...
Nothing other than a run sheet.
It's a run sheet. So it is a guide. I am now putting the 11.1...
Which I have, and that is when we actually listed the items that were going to be deferred from the meeting, when you suspended standing orders, I did say, could you list the ones that are going to be included down the bottom? And you said no.
No, because they were supposedly
so you were
recorded...
made-
Excuse me!
As usual.
Can we go to block number 6? Can we go
Pardon?
to number 6?
What? Just then?
6 will be shown on the screen if we go to it.
Yeah.
Go to number 6. On
When
block.
we
Right.
put the motion for the standing orders, it was listed then. Yeah.
No, it wasn't listed, because we listed the...
There's a whole list of...
Excuse me, we are getting clarification, and if not, then I will put it to the meeting to move that this recommendation be adopted if it has not been included.
It's not on the list, so therefore what's we...
We quite easily, it's a recommendation from this meeting.
Move the motion. Move the meeting be closed.
Can we look at what was passed earlier in
That's
the
it,
meeting.
in front of you.
Yeah, I'm keeping Gary. That standing orders be suspended in order to defer en bloc to the next council meeting the following items. Item 11, whatever it is, was not included.
So it
therefore
is to be
on the
debated, right?
And you have moved it.
And it's been moved and seconded and passed, right? So there is not a point of order. It has been proved otherwise. Will you please read out the recommendation?
Councillors, the recommendation is the council accepts the tender from Roadworks Surfacing Pty Limited at a lump sum of $85,030.26 to undertake subgrade stabilisation works with 3% cement on Merrigang Street, Barrow.
Thank you. There being no further business, thank you all very much. May your weeks ahead be healthy, and that we return to the chamber in a better frame of mind than appears to be today, and hopefully all your families and friends and everybody stays safe. I declare the meeting closed. And just so everybody is aware, I have just signed